I'm chair of the Raspberry Breeding Consortium at James Hutton, and it's my pleasure to welcome you to this webinar on new raspberry and blackberry varieties from James Hutton. For those of you that don't know, there's been a raspberry breeding program at the Institute for 68 years. And from the very outset, the program has focused on breeding raspberries to meet the needs and challenges faced by raspberry growers. I think it's important to point out the independence of this program and its critical nature to all growers, ensuring they have access to high quality varieties regardless of affiliation. Since 2002, there have been 4 industry consortia, initially from the UK and more recently from across Europe. The unique thing about this breeding programme that it is underpinned by fundamental science, kindly funded by Scottish Government, BBSRC and Innovate UK. Dr. Julie Graham and her team's amazing research has unlocked some of the secrets of the raspberry genome, and this has enabled molecular screening to be used to select progeny with the desired characteristics that growers want and need. The added advantage is that screening has helped to speed up the breeding process, which normally takes about 14 years, but with this technology can move to 7. Moreover, it's turned raspberry breeding at the Institute from a sheer numbers game to one of targeted screening to focus on traits desired by growers. For example, resistance to Phytophthora root rot, fruit size, and fruit quality, to name a few. But then why, when returns are under enormous pressure, should growers be financially supporting this raspberry breeding programme at James Hutton? Firstly, because the number of crop protection products is decreasing. Plans in Europe are to reduce this by a further 50% by 2030, and that's only 6 years away. Pest and disease management is going to therefore need to move from integrated pest management to more of an integrated crop management approach, where resistant varieties play an important part in a grower's toolbox. Having varieties with resistance to Phytophthora root rot, aphids, mildew, rust is going to be increasingly critical. And the raspberry breeding programme here at James Hutton is uniquely placed to deliver resistant varieties. The Glen Mor variety has the root rot resistance marker, plus the added bonus of being the picker's favourite. The second reason to support the breeding programme is because it can help increase productivity, another critical industry need. This is because the RBC has its unique roots in machine harvesting, with traits that are just as important today, whether we are going to support robotic harvesting, so large fruit with good presentation that's easy to deplug, or while we're waiting for those robots to march onto farm, they're equally important to speed up the ease of picking by hand. Nikki will tell you a bit more about 0658C5, which we're commercialising this year. It's got rave reviews in terms of size, pickability and flavour, a winning combination. And then the final reason we need to support this breeding programme is that to have varieties that taste fantastic, the proverbial angels dancing on the tongue that will delight customers, encouraging them to repeat purchase. Again, the RBC offers commercial varieties that meet these requirements, such as our primer canes, Skye and Lewis, of which you'll hear more about from Nikki. The current Raspberry Breeding Consortium ends in March this year, and I would strongly encourage you all to join us for the next consortium to help breed fantastic new varieties underpinned and fast-tracked by fundamental science to meet the needs of raspberry growers and customers in an increasingly challenging world. To tell you more about the breeding programme and the exciting new raspberry and blackberry varieties from James Hutton, I'm delighted to introduce Nikki Jennings, who has been breeding a wonderful fruit at the Institute for over 27 years. Thank you very much, Nikki.
Thank you, Louise, for that excellent introduction. So before I start, I'll say we'll be taking questions through the chat box. So if you if you want to ask a question during the talk, just type it in the chat box, and Abby will relay the questions to me at the end. So I'll start with the Raspberry Breeding Programme. I'll be speaking about both the raspberry and the blackberries. I'll give you a little introduction, and I'll go on to speak about our most recent releases from the raspberry breeding, the Glen Moore in Skye and Lewis that Louise has mentioned, and then I'll go on to speak about the new variety that we're releasing this year. And then at the end, I'll speak about the Blackberry Breeding Programme and the new variety that we'll be releasing from that programme also. So as Louise says, we have a very well-established raspberry breeding programme, and we've been breeding raspberries for nearly 70 years now. And since the beginning, we've released and named 22 cultivars, and we've always followed the needs of the industry, initially the Scottish industry, and we concentrated on processing and harvesting for many years, and then followed the transition into the fresh market in the late 1990s, where we focused more of our breeding efforts on fresh quality and traits suited to protected cropping systems. Now, I'm employed by James Hutton Limited, but I'm also a member of the Soft Fruit Group at JHI, which has a fantastic science programme led by Julie Graham. We have many research, many resources and excellent research covering many disciplines, from genomics and genetic resources and pathology and metabolomics and hyperspectral imaging. And all of this research feeds directly into the commercial breeding programmes to help us develop fantastic new varieties. Now, these commercial programmes are managed by James Hutton Limited, who generate an income through propagation licenses and royalties from plant sales, and this money feeds back into the breeding programmes and back into the science at the Institute. So the programme is currently funded by the Raspberry Breeding Consortium, which, as Louise said, comes to an end this March. The objectives, in a very broad sense, are to breed new varieties, both floricane and primocane types, with excellent fruit quality that are economical to grow and are suitable across the whole supply chain. We aim to breed new varieties which have tolerance or resistance to pathogens, especially to Phytophthora root rot, and we aim to do this in a shortened timescale with the use of marker-assisted selection developed here at the Institute. Now, the industry partners, there's currently 16, they review the objectives on an annual basis, and with soaring production costs and labour issues over the last few years, picking efficiency and high productivity are now priority in the programme. So the USP of the programme is to develop molecular markers to help identify important traits early in the breeding process. And top of the list was resistance to Phytophthora root rot caused by Phytophthora rubi. So Julie Graham's team identified a marker way back in 2008, and we've been using this marker to identify parents and screen progeny since 2009, and this accounts for about 40% of the crossing programme that we dedicated to this trait. And now we're at the stage where we have a really good proportion of germplasm, which combines the marker with good fruit quality and agronomic traits. And currently we have more than 40 promising selections that have the marker in our breeding trials. 9 of these are currently in on-farm trials with the industry partners, and 1 we've named as a cultivar Glen Moore. Julie's team has also developed markers for fruit size and post-harvest softening, which are deployed to screen the progeny now alongside the root rot marker as part of the validation. So back in 2020, we released 3 new varieties of raspberry. The first is the early floricane Glen Moore, which is our first cultivar with the root rot marker that I just mentioned. And after several years in soil at the Institute in the breeding plots that we knew were heavily infested with disease, we saw no symptoms on any of the reps of Glen Moore. The Glen Moore is actually a floricane cross with a primocane, which combines the best of both habits. It has a lower chill requirement compared to standard floricanes and shows good bud breakdown in the canes in the spring and start producing an early crop about 7 to 10 days earlier than Glen Ample. It's really productive with a good fruit size, and pickers often describe it as their favourite to pick because it's so fast to pick, it picks easily off the plug, and there's loads of berries. It has quite a traditional raspberry flavour with a good balance of sweetness and acid, but also has these coconut notes, which sounds a little bit odd, but it works quite well. And Glen Moore demonstrates really good performance in both the soil but also in substrate. Now, I don't have an awful lot of time to go over the data in detail, but the slides will be available through a QR code at the end of the talk if you're interested in looking at the data. This is a summary of the data taken from the breeding plots here at the Institute on productivity, on yield and fruit quality and size and picking profile. So I'll leave that for you to look at if you're interested later on. The other 2 cultivars that were released in 2020 are the first primocanes that we've released from the programme. So Lewis is an early primocane and it starts fruiting in late summer between Polka and Amara cultivars. It has a lovely big shiny glossy fruit and it really looks superb in a punnet. It's very easy to pick, it comes off the plug very well, and combined with its large fruit size, it fills the punnets really quickly. It has a really nice, intense, sweet flavour with a low acidity that the retailers prefer. And Lewis also has these floral notes, which kind of lift the flavour up. The plants themselves have moderate vigour with a nice upright stout habit. And here are some more data comparing Lewis with Skye and Kwanzaa in our breeding plots. So Skye is our double cropping primocane. It has a later primocane crop, season to the cultivar Kwanzaa. We see its most potential in the long cane crop due to its vigorous long cane and very short internodes. The high yield potential comes from a high number of laterals per cane and a high number of fruit per lateral. And like Glen Moore and Lewis, it's very easy and quick to pick, so a very good picking efficiency. And like Lewis, it is sweet with a low acidity and this time with more vanilla, and has real consistent quality in both the primocane and the long cane crops. And again, here's some data from the breeding plots looking at fruit quality of Skye compared with Lewis and Kwanzaa. So there are many, many promising raspberry selections in the pipeline, far too many to mention. 0658C5 is a floricane that we're currently in the process of commercialisation, and we hope to confirm a name by this spring. So I describe it as a good economical variety that is easy to manage and harvest and hopefully help reduce production costs, certainly in terms of labour. With this selection, we have the luxury of having 10 seasons worth of data from the breeding trials, and we see a really consistent crop with a very large fruit size and very productive and very good picking efficiency. It has all the traits. It's got a good display combined with the big fruit size, and it's easy to pick. So it's really good picking efficiency. It has a very popular flavour. It's a real crowd pleaser. And in an Innovate UK project a few years ago, it came out top in blind tasting compared to several retail samples. It's probably also the best trialist feedback of any one raspberry genotype that we've ever sent to trials. And the trialists have cited good picking efficiency and quality with really easy to manage plants. Now, plants will be available in the near future from the propagators Berry Plants UK and RW Walpole, but they're currently available to order from Gensen in the Netherlands. And again, here's some more data to support the 10 seasons worth that we've seen the selection at James Hutton Institute compared with Glen Ample and Glen D. So we need new cultivars to be robust and adaptable to environmental change, whether that's climate change, a change of geographical location, or even just a different production system. And we have some associated side projects to address this. So we currently are, since 2015, in fact, we've been conducting a dormancy experiment every year to assess and compare chill requirement of our advanced selections with older, more established cultivars after we saw some problems with bud break following milder winter temperatures about 8 to 10 years ago. This will give growers and propagators a little bit extra information when we release a new variety. Now, we have a good handle on fight off the root rot, but the industry partners over the last couple of years have asked us to concentrate more of our breeding efforts on other pathogens to help reduce chemical inputs. And we are now screening some of our seedling material for powdery mildew, post-harvest rots, especially botrytis and two-spot spider mite. Julie Graham's group has several molecular markers in the pipeline to deploy into the programme. Very recently, we won some funding to identify traits and develop markers associated with economic production, such as high yield and good picking efficiency, and looking for types suitable for low input production. Also, we have some new major facilities currently under construction here at the Institute, including the Advanced Plant Growth Centre, which is due to be open later this year. And this is a next generation controlled environments facility that will mimic a range of climates and environmental conditions. And this will help us identify more adaptable varieties in the future. So moving on to blackberries then. The Blackberry Breeding Programme is a much smaller project than the raspberry, mostly because it's been conducted without external funding until very, very recently. And we've probably had blackberries on site for almost as long as raspberries. Derek Jennings started breeding in the 60s, and we've released just 3 varieties, but we're probably best known for our Loch Ness cultivar that was released back in 1988. So in the last 10 years, there's been some fantastic new genetics and varieties released from breeding programs around the world, from North America and New Zealand and Brazil, with really superb eating quality, a real step change in flavour. And that has really increased the demand for fresh blackberry with retailers. So we have a small and very enthusiastic consortium that started funding the programme back in 2018. And at that time, in the beginning, they asked us to concentrate all of our efforts on flavour and size, especially flavour. And we appear to achieve this very quickly. So once we found good flavour early in the germplasm, we expanded our list of traits to include yield and pathogen tolerance and reversion sensitivity. And this photo just shows off some of the material currently in the pipeline with industry partners that combines some of these good traits. But there's one that stands out in particular that we are commercialising this year. We're very excited about it. And also we're in the process of naming it and also hope to have a name by the spring. This is Bramble 18.5 that has really been outstanding in the breeding trials and in the commercial trials. It's a lovely consistent shape, size and appearance, and it picks really well. It's thorn-free, it's a semi-erect type with very easy to manage canes, but most importantly, it has this superb flavour, really fantastic eating quality, with very sweet fruit, very fruity, intense flavour, with no bitterness or astringency notes at all. It shows little or no reversion after cold storage, which I'll show you in a moment. And the industry partners who've had trials over the last 2 years in England and the Netherlands and in Germany have all agreed that it has good quality and should be commercialised. So now we'd like to see it trialled more widely. Now there's a very limited amount of plant material available to trial this year from Krega in Germany and Gensen in the Netherlands, and you can either contact them directly or ourselves for material. So reversion is a condition in blackberry which causes reddening of the black druplets after harvesting in cold storage, and this dramatically reduces marketability. Now, Bramble 18.5 shows very good colour stability and shows almost little or no reversion. Don't know if you can see from this photo that Loch Ness on the right is very sensitive to the condition, but Bramble 18.5 just stays black after storage after 6 days. And again, here's some data showing good fruit quality and flavour compared with some of the other genotypes and varieties that we have at the Institute, and a little bit on picking profile and yield and fruit size. So if you're interested in trial material for any of the raspberries or our blackberries, you can contact James Hutton Limited Licensing for more information and trialling and testing agreements. Now, myself and Louise mentioned that the Raspberry Breeding Consortium is coming to an end this March, and if you're interested in joining a future consortium or supporting the programme, contact our business development manager, Jamie Smith, who will be at Fruit Logistica next week in Berlin, if you want to meet with him there. Now, the QR code on this slide and also the final slide links to a PDF of these slides if you want to look at the results in more detail. Now, finally, we'd like to invite you to the SSR Soft Fruit meeting, which we're hosting here on site at the Institute on the 23rd of February, which is 3 weeks from today. It's a face-to-face meeting where you would hear more about the breeding programmes and the research that goes on here at the Institute to support the programmes, as well as some talks from industry, and you're all welcome to come along. If you're interested, please contact Susan McCallum, she's our blueberry breeder, and do it soon. So many thanks to the consortia who've supported the RBC since 2002, and also to Louise Sutherland, who's been our chair. Also a thank you to the Blackberry Breeding Consortium, but also to the team in Soft Fruit Group and JHL. So thank you for listening. I'm happy to take questions through the chat, and Abby will read them out to us.
So we've already had a few questions come in. The first one is, do you have views on the chilling requirements and cold tolerance of 0658 C5?
That's a good question. I didn't mention that in my talk. It has been included for quite a few years now in our dormancy experiment. And off the top of my head, I can say is less of a chill requirement than Glen Ample, but probably a bit more than Glen Moore. But I'd have to check to put that in quantitative terms, in actual figures. But I can get back to you on that.
The next question is, in Bramble 18.5, what's the yield? What is the yield per plant?
The yields per plant for 18.5 is consistently higher than Loch Ness. So we measure it in our breeding plots. We've got potted trials, potted replicated trials of 18.5 and compare it with Loch Ness and Asterina and a few other varieties. And together with a couple of our other new selections, Bramble 5 comes out top.
The next question is 18.5 susceptible to downy mildew?
Also a good question. We don't have a great deal of disease pressure here at the Institute from downy mildew, but the partners do in Germany and the Netherlands, and they haven't reported any problems with it so far. Now, they've only had material for the last 2 years, but it's not come up as anything obvious or being particularly sensitive to downy mildew.
The next question is, will James Hutton have a booth at Fruit Logistica next week? What is the hall and number, please? And I actually have that in front of me just now. So we'll be based at hall 5.2, stand B50. If you want more information, if you go into James Hutton Limited's LinkedIn, we've done some posts on there, so you'll be able to access the location there as well and reach out to the people that are going to be at Fruit Logistica.
Thanks, Abby.
The next question is, will the new blackberries be able to be available for trial at subtropical territories like Mexico, Guatemala and California?
At the moment, we're only covering territories in Europe, but we'll have discussed territories further afield. At the moment, we don't have any material in these places, but it is under discussion.
And what spacing of plants is recommended for the Bramble 18.5?
Oh, we've put it in. We put them in 1 metre apart, which is just our standard spacing in the Blackberry breeding plot, and that's in pots. I'm not sure what spacing the partners have it at. I would have to check that. But we've got them in 1 metre apart, and we're assessing 2 canes per pot.
And do you have any views on the chilling requirements for Bramble 18.5?
Not so far. We haven't. We don't have enough plant material to carry out the experiment yet for any of the blackberries. It's a destructive experiment, so we get through established long canes quite quickly over the course of the experiment. But once we've bulked up more material, we will. We do know that it breaks bud quite a bit earlier than the likes of Loch Ness or Loch Tay. And blackberries generally have a lower chill requirement anyway, but we will start it as soon as we have enough material to destroy in the future.
And has 0658C5 been looked at for machine harvesting?
Oh, actually it hasn't. Now, we have a long history of machine harvesting here at the Institute, but we haven't used it on that genotype, just because it's, when we developed 0658C5, it was under the hood of the fresh market. And we haven't tried it, but based on the fact that it plugs very easily, and the laterals, when it's grown outside in the soil, the laterals are quite strong and upright, and they're not as long as and sprawling as they are in the tunnel. I reckon it's worth a try. It does have Glen Ample as a parent, which machine harvests very well.
That's all the questions that we've got in the chat for now, but if anyone has any more questions that they want to ask.
Hi, this is Miriam from Mexico. I just would like to thank Nikki for all of her work and all of her. She's already a legend for us. So I hope to see you in 3 weeks. And thank you so much for bringing so much to this breeding area.
Hi, Miriam. Thank you very much. It's great to hear there's someone joining from Mexico.
Of course, I always keep on your steps. I wish someday we will be able to do what you've been doing.
Oh, well, you're welcome to come to the Institute at any time.
Thank you.
We've got another question. Does 0658C5 have A10 and Phytophthora ruby resistance?
It definitely has no resistance to Phytophthora, unfortunately. And we selected it because it was so easy to grow. But it is sensitive to Phytophthora root rot. It does have gene A10, but unfortunately, 2 years ago, all of our genotypes with the A10 resistance gene to the large raspberry aphid were covered in the large raspberry aphid. So the resistance breaking strain has certainly arrived up in Scotland. So we really need a new source of resistance. Is that it for the questions?
That's all of them covered in the chat so far. If anyone preferred to unmute to ask their questions.
Okay, well, if there's no more questions, I think Ryan has put up some links to the website, and you can contact me at any time, or anyone in the group, or James Hutton Limited if you have any questions in the future. I think we'll wrap it up there. A big thanks to the marketing team for setting up this webinar for us, and a huge thanks to Louise for giving a superb introduction. And all of the selections and varieties that I've been speaking about today will be fruiting on our site during the fruit season. We've got a lovely demonstration tunnel where we've got some fresh plants and fresh long cane that will give us some great fruit this year. So you're welcome to come along and visit at any time. Otherwise, thank you very much for listening and giving up your Friday afternoon to listen to my talk. So have a good weekend, everyone.
And Nikki, on behalf of everybody, I'd like to thank you very much for an informative talk. It's been very interesting. Thank you very much, and thank you for everybody for attending.
Great, thank you.